Alright, let's talk about Marlin Airport. First of all, I just want to make a huge shout out to Nintendo for creating possibly the best background out of any Splatoon stage. You've got like the little jellies over there bouncing up and down on the luggage carts. You got this luggage cart that drives around. You've got like the little jelly engineer who's messing with the landing gear. I don't know why that guy's on top of that thing. I don't think you're supposed to be up there, but he's having a great time. You know, maybe he's avoiding his supervisor up there, just like jamming out to some tunes instead of, you know, having to do things. Like, that's just one side of this map, right? You've also got like the inside of the airport. You've got this whole thing back. You're like, just so much thought went into all of this, and it's great, and I like that. Do I like the stage? I don't. Okay, so it's not anywhere near like the worst stage in the game, and I honestly think that there are probably some modes that are pretty playable in tournament, but there are some critical flaws in the map as well that keep it from being, you know, one of the really good ones in my book. One of the disadvantages of me making this video right now is that I currently don't have a competitive team, and so I don't have as many opportunities to scrim and figure out how this map really works from the perspective of a coordinated team. A lot of this is from talking to other people or from playing in solo queue. Let's talk a little bit about the features of this map, maybe some movement tricks here or there, little things that I've figured out about it. And I'm sure that you guys can probably add a few of your own as well.
Here it is, here it is. Truck to refrigerators to dumpster, 360 spin onto the palace, backflip gainer into the trash can.
Yeah, gainer! Yeah!
Parkour, parkour!
Parkour!
I'm right behind you, Andy! Come on! Yeah!
To start with, we've got zones, which is a pretty basic version of the map. There are a lot of features that are on other modes that aren't here, which makes some sense. Generally, they have tended to try to make zones a more difficult map to push up on, because the objective doesn't push up with you. You can paint the zone and then push ahead and like keep yourself in between you and the enemy team, which means that you want to make it as difficult as possible to push up, because if they can hold in here, they just kind of get points ticking for free the whole time that they're here, even if they're just wasting time. They don't even have to win anything up here. So it makes sense to make zones the most restrictive from the offensive side. The only way that you can get into the enemy side is over this fan. Now, I mean, there are a couple of clever ways of doing this. You know, you could sneak around. If I actually hit the jump button, you can kind of like hide up here and then maybe like sneak around this way, do a little something like this, and there's not a lot of paint that gives you away that way. You can do stuff like get over here, maybe hide here or something if they don't see you, and then just kind of, whoop, I'm in there now. There are a couple of little sneaky tricks like that that might work like 1% of the time, but otherwise, you're kind of just forcing your way in. And then from here, you're trying to hold as well as you can. I don't have a ton of problems with zones. One thing that I'm maybe a little bit less fond of is how small the zone is. Like a single splashdown just kind of covers this whole thing, and it's pretty hard to paint through against certain specials. So even though there's some cover in the middle that might help with like slider cheese, there are definitely going to be ways to cheese this zone. It's just a little bit on the small side. But we'll talk about some general map features that are there for like most of the modes, and then for the other modes we'll talk about the more specific stuff. So, relatively wide map, and one of the things that I do really like about this map is how many ways out of spawn there are on defense once you get a certain ways in. You are able to go all the way over here and drop down and end up on the map this way, and you can also go all the way to the right and drop down over here. So you have multiple ways out of spawn, that all circumnavigate this fan, which is nice on the defending side. On the attacking side, not so much. On the attacking side, like we've said, we have to go in the middle. But one disadvantage, and I think this applies in generally all of the modes, is that the spawn area is just not super defensible. This is a really skinny spawn area here. If you put someone underneath this ledge with a range blaster, I think they can probably do damage to anyone unless they're, like, all the way back here. Maybe even then. Not sure. I'd have to try that out. But definitely with something like a Zuka, like, I am splatting people in spawn with this thing if I get this far up. So, on the defending side, you really need to not get pushed back this far. You need to at least control the high ground up here, or maybe, like, across the way, you know, if you want to use the fan, or using the high ground on the right over here. But once people are, like, up this ramp or across that fan, well, okay, they can't get across that fan in zones, but they can in other modes. You're in a lot of trouble as a team. It's really going to be hard to come back from that at all. Now, most of the time, in most of the games that I've played in solo queue so far, everything has kind of stalled around the fan. And people have generally been able to kind of post up a defense over here and keep people from flooding in off the fan. But I think in a coordinated setting, it's going to be a lot easier to find the kind of momentum that gets you further in. And that's what I'm worried about. One thing that the players scoring have to watch out for is someone dropping in from the right-hand side, because this can kind of just give you immediate access to, like, the back side of the zone from going that way. So one of the desperation plays that you're seeing a lot if points are ticking down and you don't have very much time is just to sprint out the right-hand side and hope not enough people are watching you. So that is going to be something that's important to watch when you're trying to score, especially in the situation that you're, you know, holding from this fan. Another neat thing about that drop is that it gives you access to the fan from this angle. A lot of people who aren't familiar with the map will, like, look from here to here for enemy players, and they'll just kind of play from here, not recognizing that if someone comes this way and shoots them from here, they're not going to see it if this is what they're looking at. So early on, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of this flank. I think once people start learning the map better, that's going to work an awful lot less. But it is still something that you have to keep an eye on. And it's possible even if the fan is up because there is a paintable side here. This is one of, I think, my favorite parts about this map, the fact that this fan is paintable on 3 sides. Paintable walls enable a lot of really cool movement options. It makes it so that this being a choke point isn't quite as bad, because as the attacking team, you're able to approach it in a number of different ways that might be surprising. I can just, you know, get a Zuka and then pop it and have access to a lot of different locations from the fan right there. So even though it's sometimes easy to get on, it's not always easy to get across that fan. And there's not a lot of, you know, cover as you get in here. So getting your frontliners up and over the top is definitely challenging, to the map's credit. It's also challenging in part because you've got all of this high ground up here that helps you against the fan. Like, a crab tank from right here sees almost the entire fan and can definitely hit pretty much the entire fan using the AoE from those shots. And it can also see anybody who's trying to use the grates, so not even that is really an escape from it. And any kind of backline weapon, right? You can run not even like an E-leader, you can run like splatlings, you can run a tri-stringer up here, and they all just kind of see everything, and they can defend pretty well from this particular spot, which is relatively hard to contest. Like, yeah, you can maybe shoot from up here or something like that, but if you really want to get on top of that player, you have to go all the way up the unpaintable stuff here. And since they're right here, they've seen that coming from a mile away, so not as much of a threat. And that's a nice little defensive option that you have to avoid that lockout situation. I think that covers most of it. We also need to talk about the fans on the side. So these fans, I think, are kind of cool. I like how large this platform is. Still, you know, it's not like Mahi so much, where it's so narrow and so predictable that if someone's here, you know exactly where they are and you can just kind of pre-fire them. you can kind of use this wall for cover, you can kind of use the fan for cover, and there's also the mix-up of actually shooting the fan, and now it's kind of working like one of those conveyor belts at an airport, where you're walking and the platform is moving at the same time, so you really kind of scoot across that. That's super nice. And then on the flip side, if there's someone on that platform and you don't want them to be there, then you just hit the fan, and now all of a sudden you've closed distance with them. It's kind of like pulling them toward you. Get over here! You're playing Mortal Kombat. So that's kind of neat too. And I like for short-range weapons the ability to drop down in here and play kind of like on the side of Museum, where you can kind of like play scrappy fights, you can stall for time here. It's a little bit more difficult to get out of, and so you probably don't want to spend a ton of time down there, but it can be a place where if you're the last player up and you're retreating from the enemy team, you can get down here for a super jump, force the enemy team to chase you all the way over there, and then they don't even get you, and you've burned some of their time. Or you could just try and fight it out there, get a trade or something. Again, kill some of their time. One of the most common mistakes that you're going to see people make early on this map is falling in this hole, because they're thinking, wait, isn't there something there? Because there is something there when the fan's here. And so you'll see a lot of like dualies players thinking, oh, that's just a safe drop, and falling into this pit. And rolling off backwards. So watch out for that, of course. I think that generally does it for zones. I'm going to be saying this on other maps too, but my hunch here is that you're going to play a really long, protracted neutral game in mid, because mid doesn't have a ton of cover and it's fairly big, so you really need to win a fight pretty cleanly. And then as soon as you get across mid, you still have to get through this choke point of the fan, which is going to take you a minute on most modes. So it's going to take a while to like get up out of the bowl that is mid, get out of the blender. But once you do, I think from there it's going to snowball pretty hard. I think it's going to be easier for the attacking team to lock out at that point in time, because there's just a little bit too much that they can do, I think, once they get in here and really start setting up. Like, just imagine that you've got like an AoE weapon down here. Like, they can see everything from this particular point, and you definitely cannot see them from here. Like, think about how little of that area down there you can see from this perspective versus how much you can see from this perspective. That's pretty dangerous. Like, even Azuka right here would be nuts. So, like I said, the spawn lockout, really dangerous, and once that starts to happen, I feel like games are going to go pretty quick here. But mid is definitely something that you're going to scrap over for a while to kind of grapple for control. So that part, at least, makes it better than, I think, like the worst maps in the game in my book. Tower control is not going to be too different in terms of level geometry compared to zones. The biggest change is that there's a ramp here, so there's a way for the attacking team to get up here. But that just makes sense because that's totally following the tower path, and they need to be able to follow it up here. Otherwise, there's really not that much, I think, that's different from zones. Obviously, you've got slightly different cover in mid, but that's relatively minor. One of the biggest deviations in tower control compared to the other modes is that the fan isn't exactly the choke point, because the tower needs to go alongside fan. So you still need to control this area, because you don't want the enemy team to have defenders up here on high ground in places where even a splatter shot can just shoot down at the tower. And also have like a backliner at this angle, so you have to watch in two different directions to prevent yourself from getting shot off the tower. But the tower path is just generally very linear. Even though, it's going around that choke point, it's really hard for the attacking team to go into the enemy base in any other way than the direction the tower is going to. They really have to kind of brute force their way through. And what makes that problem, which I think is a problem, a bit worse, is the fact that this is a 14-point checkpoint. And then up ahead is a 12-point checkpoint, and there's a third checkpoint for 10 points. So 36 of the 100 points that you have to score in tower control are all checkpoints, where the tower is just kind of sitting still. So the map isn't doing many favors for you as the tower rider. Your team just needs to beat them and get them out of the way across a pretty narrow strip. Like, all of this stuff in here is kind of like the mix-up option, because what you really need to control is this right up here so that you can get moving in that direction. Once you clear second checkpoint, it starts to snowball quite a bit more, because at that point the tower has reached high ground. The tower is higher up at that point than anything else on the map that you can stand on. And so it's kind of hard to contest at that point. Like, if you get a squeezer looking across that fan platform in the base with a wall up, there aren't a lot of things in the game that can actually move it out of there without, like, popping a special. I guess you can try and, you know, snipe it from far away a couple of times, but, like, this is taller than anything else on the map. The worst you're worried about is this rail over here, and you're going to see someone coming before they get there with that. Like, at this point, you know, once you get to that third checkpoint, once you're, like, past second, I feel like the game should probably be over, and it's just kind of a mad scramble to stop it. But up until that point, it's just going to be a lot of fighting over this area right here, and then once you get control back, it's just going to be a lot of fighting over this area right here. And kind of a lot of back and forth between the two. I feel like the flow is going to be really, really congested, really, like, special spam oriented, because getting through those choke points is not going to be easy on this mode. This is probably, I think, one of the ones that I like the least from how I've played it so far. But this is also, like I said, one of the modes that really shows off the spawn camp. Because if you do get people in front of the tower going into that third checkpoint, and you're locking out like this, and like drawing their attention off in this direction while the tower pushes over there, like, it's so hard. Like, what do they do? I got up here on a match in Anarchy earlier, and I went 13-2 that game. It just ended very quickly. Rainmaker has a quirk to it that is unique to this mode. It does bring back this paintable wall. I think it's only Zones, I want to say, that doesn't have that wall paintable there, which, like we said, makes some sense. It mostly looks the same. You've got your first checkpoint here. That's the only first checkpoint, and then your final checkpoint is up here. But there's one notable feature that is actually absent at the beginning, which is the fan. You can't raise this platform until the opponents clear this checkpoint. So think about what that means from the perspective of the defending team. Being where I am right now, none of these walls are paintable. There's no way up except the one option that you have to get back if you drop down and don't want to be here is to make this relatively precise jump from the top of your own Rainmaker pedestal. But if you've lost a fight and need to be retreating, it begs the question, like, how realistic is that when I just dunked in 2 seconds off of picking up the Rainmaker from mid? The enemy team is probably already there. You've probably committed to being in a fight as soon as you drop off this ledge into mid. You're probably not going back at all. Like, I was gonna say, unless they dunk, but if they dunk, then you've probably been cleared out first. So, that's probably just not happening in general. But once we pop the Rainmaker, I'm doing it specifically this way just to highlight something that you want to be careful about. Oops, now I can't shoot the Rainmaker shield anymore. So, watch out for that. But once you've popped that, now we have a lot of the same options we had before. Remember that, you know, we've got this kind of stuff that we can do. I believe we also have this that we can do. Yeah, I'll have to see if you can do that with the Rainmaker in hand. Haven't tried that one out, but I think that should be possible. Oh, no, actually, it's a little bit too slow. Maybe I just wasn't precise enough, but that looked pretty not doable. I don't know. Maybe I need to run a little bit of run speed or something. Can this be made at least? Yeah, that can be made at least. Okay. Well, so you've got that option, but something that we haven't seen yet is that there's actually also a fan over here now. And this is also locked. We can see on the other side that this will not be available yet until the checkpoint is cleared. But that fan on the right is a very important second route in on the attacking side. It's really not like super great for the defending team because I guess like it's an option for them to escape, you know, in that situation where they have to back up from mid. And it's weird that they only get that once the opponents score, that like scoring as the opponents gives them that option to retreat all of a sudden. But I haven't seen that being put to much use in the matches that I have played here for that reason. Generally, I've seen it more as an option for the attacking team to get in here and maybe set up in this kind of area. And setting up right here is pretty nasty. I've seen a splash player get up into this position and pop Crab Tank and lock everything down around this right side area and make it really difficult for the defending team to move in and stop the push. And I'm sure there are a lot of other strategies, you know. Again, look at all of the things that I can hit with Zuka from here. The possibilities for being like a flank over here that distracts the enemy team are pretty good. I want to see if I can make this jump. Okay, not quite. That feels like something that might be possible with another weapon or something, but I'm probably not going to try it too much in my own matches. But it's very compact around here. There are a lot of places for short-range weapons to maybe try and hole up and hide. If you can, you know, get down here, this is really obnoxious. If you can play from here, you can see a lot. So those are some ideas for getting in. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's going to boil down to just who can bully their way through the choke points the best. And that flank is really one of the only options that you're going to have as an alternative for how to move. One other thing I want to point out, though, about Rainmaker movement here. Have I painted this yet? No, I haven't. Good. Okay. So I can, you know, once the platform goes up, I am capable of making it to the goal in only one Rainmaker shot. So looks like this. So we fire it there. That paints the wall and the path to it, and I dunk. So if you are kind of stalling here on the fan, waiting for your team to get something done, and a wipe happens, that's your play right there. That's your maximum speed KO. All right, Clam Blitz. So Clam Blitz, once again, has this paintable wall. All of the base is pretty much the same. There might be some very slight differences in cover, but it's not super significant. Is worth noting, this fan is now here, and this fan on Clam Blitz is kind of gross. So I'm going to make a power clam here, and I'll show you that you don't have to get very far into their base from here to be able to score this thing. I can jump off here and already be in range to score it, and I don't have to jump that far. I could probably jump from like here and make it in. Yeah, so that would hit. So this is an angle that you really have to be watching as the defending team, and like you don't really have line of sight on that super well until you get like all the way over here. So if you're especially like a defensive backline weapon, one of the things that you'll want to think about is maybe having a position up here and maybe trying to use this right side peak, because you can use it both to attack the fan and also to attack this. Now, as someone who will be attacking that sort of position, I, as a Splattershot player, love that there's someone over here because the Zuka just destroys that spot. So it feels pretty difficult to defend from that particular location. And if your only other option is like slowly coming across on this fan to get there, I don't know. This seems, again, like a map that will snowball out of control once one team gets control of the enemy base. So that's something to watch out for. In terms of other places you can throw clams from, I mean, you can get it from back here. Not that you would ever really care to, because you're just going to do this sort of thing, or even this if you get up that far. But let's say, I don't know, maybe someone snuck into the base and got in, and you're super jumping into them. Like, you could throw clams from all the way back here. Probably would have to, like, swim and jump, but yeah, you can make it from there. You can make it from up here. There are a lot of places that you as a defending team need to worry about clearing, which is something I'm worried about here. Like, you might have people coming in this direction, but if they've gotten over the fan, you might also have to worry about clearing, like, this back corner down here, or this corner down here, all of which are close enough that you can get jumps in that will score. So make sure that on your way out on defense, you're painting very thoroughly to make sure that nobody is still hiding around here. Regarding fan trick plays and stuff like that, you can make a jump across from here on this side and score that way. And then maybe you get some benefit out of this cover as the fan goes on its way up. Kind of hop over the top like that. You also, you know, in theory, could go for like a jump like that and try to get across. That's obviously going to be slower, and so you'd probably prefer to have control of the fan to get across quick. And then as for single clams, you can probably, I'm sure, score from places like this. Yeah, you can throw them in like that. And so that could be, for those of you who remember Splatoon 2 Kelp Dome, that could be a little bit of a strat where you're just kind of stalling the basket by throwing in single clams like that, and then spinning it up again and trying this sort of thing to keep the basket open a little longer. I'm not sure if the timing works out perfectly for that. I'll have to open it up and give it a try. But that's one idea that I've considered. One other thing that I want to talk about here really quick with regard to the snowballing, though, is look at how many clams spawned in mid, right? I took like 3 of them from mid, but then there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 that are just here in this immediate area, in addition to whatever it took to make a power clam. Like, on your way to the enemy basket, you're going to pick up like over 50 points in scoring just by moving from one side of the map to the other as a team. And that means that getting wiped in mid is a really big deal. I think this map, in the general case, is going to make Tacticooler even more important than it already is, because getting wiped and really losing control of your base is just going to be so devastating. So, let's see... Oh, that was the wrong basket. LOL. Let's see about this stall idea. Okay. Throw that in there. Turn around. Throw that in there. I think this is slightly slower. Yeah. I think that's... You're losing a little bit of time on each of those laps, but it could be a way to sneak some extra points in if the enemy team hasn't gotten control that far out yet, and you still have access to the fan to be able to try and pull these kinds of things off. And if you have other people scoring in the meantime, that could also just be a really annoying way of getting extra points that they're not willing to contest right at that moment. So, something to consider if they're not playing that area right there to prevent your plays from here. That said, on defense, I've usually found that coming out this far right side is one of the safer ways to do it, because it gives you access to all of this, and, you know, if you need to get control of your fan back, well, you can just come in from this flank route that's more difficult to watch. So, that's probably something that I would prioritize. As a backline weapon, you might want to consider coming over here sometimes, just to make sure that you're keeping them honest on the fan. You might get some shots over here, although you are left side peeking. And also to give you an angle on the fan that they have to watch from over here, you know, I might have to shoot a Zuka at it, but at least that means I'm not shooting my Zuka at something else. So, something to think about. But I am interested in seeing how this plays out in future competitive matches because, like I said, I haven't been able to see too much of coordinated play on this map. But those are my takes just from analyzing it on my own and from seeing what little of it I have so far. So let me know what you think about it in the comments. There's usually a thing or two that I miss here, which is fun to learn about. So we'll see what else the community can come up with here.